Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a mind immeasurably geekier than ours, Mr. Pete Dillon-Trenchard.
Hello! And welcome to Geek 101. Or for those of you who don't speak binary, Geek 5. My name's Pete, and for the next hour I'm going to be interrupting my 7-season marathon of Buffy the Vampire Slayer on Netflix to take you on a journey through the weird, wonderful, and sometimes downright traumatising world of nerd. Think of me as kind of like Brian Cox, but without the academic qualifications or the frankly dubious sex appeal. Some of you might be thinking, what is a geek? Well, the popular reference website UrbanDictionary.com defines geek as the watery deposit on the end of a camel's penis. But apologies to any camel cock fans in the room, because I will be going for the more common definition of geek, which is, of course, someone who's more passionate about something than is either healthy, normal, or attractive to members of the opposite sex. Or indeed the same sex, if that's what you're into, as apparently most of the girls that I've ever asked out have told me they are. Some of you are also probably thinking, Pete, why do we need this? And the simple answer is, you don't, but it's a really good hook to hang an hour of material on. And of course, the less simple answer is, we are living in the age of the geek. Every year at the cinemas now, fantastic superheroes and also characters like Batman are watered down and turned into films for even the most simple cinema goer to understand. I mean, papers like The Metro, a few months ago the Metro took the season 3 climax of Game of Thrones and made it into a news story. The shocking Game of Thrones fans with the revelation that the Metro can understand the plot of Game of Thrones. And perhaps most worryingly of all for me, that thanks to the Harry Potter series of books, there's now not a child alive who doesn't know how to perform a killing curse. And the President of the United States is a geek. Barack Obama has been photographed outside the lighthouse. He lives in a lighthouse now. He's been photographed there with a lightsaber, which presumably means that he's a geek, or that the defence budget's really gone downhill. Which might explain why he's living in a lighthouse. But I can just imagine the conversation there. So, wouldn't you rather have a gun? No, the lightsaber's a more elegant weapon for a more civilised age. More civilised age, sir. Have you heard of Lindsay Lohan? President Obama, of course, often referred to as the most powerful man in the world. He's not. Superman. Clues very much in the name. President Obama actually ranks disappointing 267th on the list of world's most powerful men, just below Dick Grayson, the original Robin from Batman, and just above Marty, the small child from the cartoon series Captain Planet and the Planeteers, who could talk to monkeys and nothing else. But despite all this, there is still kind of a stigma around being around all but the most casual geeks. I think there is this stigma, and we're not quite as frowned upon as paedophiles now, but we do still frequent many of the same toy shops. And over the next hour, I'm hoping that I'll bust some of the myths and preconceptions around geeks, probably reinforce other ones. When I announced I was doing this show, one of my friends on Twitter said to me, "Pete, that's a great idea. But can you please make sure that audiences don't go away from the show thinking that all geeks are sort of sexually desperate, overweight men who live with their parents?" And I said, that's going to be a problem. I don't still live with my parents, but I really wish I did. Those were very much the glory years. But there are all kinds of geeks out there. There are male geeks, female geeks, fat geeks, thin geeks, single geeks, married geeks. there are even some geeks, apparently, with social skills, although I've not managed to talk to any of them. Because, I am very much a traditional geek, and I always have been a geek. I mean, my very first words were, "Damn it, Mum, I'm a toddler, not a bricklayer." Which, for those of you who don't know, is actually a hilarious pastiche of Dr. McCoy's line, "I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer," from Star Trek Season 1, Episode 26, Devil in the Dark. Oh yeah, the show's fun and educational. But the one thing that the show won't leave you doing is going, geeks seem really cool. I'm going to stop off at HMV on the way home to buy the complete Babylon 5 on DVD. And, although you should, it's really good. Incidentally, I know if you're sitting there thinking, I'm getting really worried I'm not going to understand all of the references tonight. My advice is, don't worry, you're not meant to. Nobody's meant to get all the references. I mean, although this is ostensibly a comedy show, it is also carefully designed to make you feel better about your own lives by comparison to my own. So my suggestion is just let the geeky references wash over you like the light of the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Actually, maybe that's a bad example. But if if you are still concerned, be aware that I will be selling a glossary afterwards for the show. Coming in 2 different editions. I've got the one for geeks and the one for non-geeks. I'll tell you everything you need to know. So without further ado, let's start learning.
Module 1. Geek dating.
But you can't really love him. You haven't the slightest knowledge of love.
Because why not start with the thing that I know least about? Because I've never been very successful with women. Not human women, anyway. When I was 13 years old, I did try and build myself a robot girlfriend. I say I tried to build myself a robot girlfriend. What I really mean is I drilled a hole in a speak and spell. It's a grim mental image, I'll just give it a minute to let it sink in. The thing is, I knew very early on it wasn't going to work between me and the robot girlfriend, because according to Isaac Asimov's first law of robotics, oh yeah, I'm going there, people, a robot can't harm a human being, and I don't enjoy it if they're not hurting me just a little bit. It's actually that routine which caused one man at a gig a couple of months ago to heckle me telling me that I'm the reason God invented prostitutes. Yeah. Oh, nice. Is it? Thanks. So I felt it was unfair until I realised that there are at least 4 different comic book shops in or around Soho's red light district. So clearly he wasn't the first person to have made the association between geek and sex tourist. Maybe they should make that their new slogan, Soho. Come for the whores, stay for Spider-Man. It's one of those things. I've actually never been good with women, and there are plenty of reasons for this. But I think one of the main ones is I never had the birds and the bees talk as a child. Instead, I had the "we don't mind if you're gay" talk. Which, I'll be honest, was slightly confusing for a 7-year-old. But I could understand where they were coming from, though. I mean, whenever I was playing with my friends at that age, I would almost always be the pink Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. Wasn't my fault. We were a group of 5 boys. I was the only one with breasts. But I know what you're thinking there. So you're thinking, but Pete, what about the yellow Mighty Morphin Power Ranger? Wasn't she also a woman, played by actress Choi Trang in the first series, and replaced in the second season by Karen Ashley due to a pay dispute? And you're right. I mean, weirdly, you're right to thinking all of those things. If anything, I'd say you've got maybe slightly too much knowledge of a now defunct 90s kids TV series. But I hate to burst your bubble there, Captain Arrogant. Because according to the Japanese footage on which Power Rangers was based, the yellow Power Ranger was actually a man, so the joke's on you. I studied maths at university, and while I was there, I learned that the number of times a person has sex in their life is inversely proportional to the number of toy sonic screwdrivers they own. So the more sonic screwdrivers you have, the less likely you are to get laid. I have 9 toy sonic screwdrivers, one of which had more sexual contact with my last girlfriend than I did. There's always something a bit fishy about that. Oh. That's too far. That's too far. Found your level quite early on. I think it is unfair that there's this kind of stigma around dating geeks, because there are a lot of good reasons to date a geek. I mean, for one thing, we're very grateful. You can make requests of a geek that you would never dare make of someone with self-esteem. Most of these jokes will be about me rather than geeks in general, but just assume I mean me if you're offended. It's fine. Of course, the second good reason to date a geek is that we are meticulous in our roleplay. Oh yeah. A lot of couples, they'll go and buy expensive sex toys to spice up the relationship, but with a geek, all you need is a 20-sided die and some imagination. And of course, the third best reason to date a geek is that, the contents of our bedroom do tend to be worth a fortune, and statistically we die younger than most people, so sitting on a goldmine, ladies. But I think what it ultimately boils down to is I find it quite hard to actually approach women. I mean, I was on the train a couple of weeks back, and there was a girl sat opposite me, wearing a badge which said, "Ask me about Star Trek." And all I could think was, why? What could you possibly tell me that I don't already know? But because of the educational nature of the show, I have come up with a few custom chat-up lines to use if you are trying to woo a particular kind of geek. For instance, if you're trying to woo a Pokemon fan, you might want to use, "Hey, can I get a Pikachu boobs? I'll show you my master balls." Yeah, you're right not to respond to that. It's horrible. For the Star Wars fan, you can tell them, "Hey, I want to fire my proton torpedoes into your thermal exhaust port. I'll make you explode." It's because it's at the end of the film with the... No, you get it, you're just disgusted. Maybe for a Star Trek fan, you could tell them, "I'm going through the Vulcan pond far. I'll literally die if you don't have sex with me." Or indeed for the Doctor Who fan, there's the classic, "Hey, I'm 29 and you're 18. Let's pretend I'm 900 so that the age difference seems somehow less creepy." I can't guarantee that any of these lines will work. I mean, I've never had any success with them myself. I mean, for instance, a couple of weeks back, I was in a bar, not by choice. And I saw a geeky-looking girl at the bar, by which I mean she had glasses. It's not a foolproof system. Although I do find that the visual impairment tends to help my case, rather. There's worse to come. I'm going to get quite down on myself before the evening's out. I was wearing my second best Ghostbusters t-shirt that evening. So I went up to her and I said, "Hey babe, you remind me of the Statue of Liberty. Because I'd like to cover you in mood slime and ride you through the streets of New York." And it doesn't work as a chat-up line. No, of course it doesn't, because as she told me that evening, I was wearing a t-shirt with the logo from the first Ghostbusters film, whereas the Statue of Liberty stuff happened in the second. And if there's one thing that really turns girls off, it's inaccurate references.
Module 2. Conventions.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Conventions, of course, by the way, also not a good place to pick up women. I mean, as much difficulty as I have chatting to women at a normal time, I find it a lot more difficult when they're dressed as a ninja bunny assassin from a TV show that I've never watched from Japan, and with a 12-foot wooden sword strapped to their back. I mean, that's too big for a sword, isn't it? Conventions, just by way of cheer, who's been to a sci-fi convention in the room? Wow, that's a lot more than last night. This section took up most of the show last night just explaining. But yeah, no, for the few of you who haven't been, sci-fi convention It's basically a pension plan for out-of-work actors. It turns out that as long as you starred in a sci-fi series at some point in your career, there's quite a lucrative sort of earning to be made from every couple of months going to a hotel in the middle of nowhere, facing a room of people dressed as characters more popular than the one you played, and answering the same old questions, the answer to most of which is, because it was in the script. Can I have my money now? But no, conventions are big business. I mean, the big San Diego Comic-Con happened a couple of weeks ago, and they had the likes of Joss Whedon turning up to announce the title of the new Avengers film. We had London Film Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago, and we had David Hasselhoff. Charging £30 for an autograph. Yeah. I've got to say that the stunned reaction is the right one. I mean, if I'm paying £30 to meet someone, at the very least I expect a happy ending. Just to clarify, I'm saying that for £30, I would expect David Hasselhoff, star of Knight Rider and the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, to bring me to orgasm in whichever way he deemed appropriate, preferably while singing the Berlin Wall-smashing hit Looking for Freedom. More bizarrely, a couple of years ago, Mike Tyson was the big guest at London Film and Comic-Con, and he was charging £75 for an autograph. I mean, I won't go into what I'd expect for £75, but appropriately a ring would be involved. That's great. That's great. But conventions do have their detractors. For instance, a few years ago, San Diego Comic-Con was picketed by the Westboro Baptist Church. Are we all familiar with their work? Yeah, I mean, for those of you who aren't, they're an evil right-wing group in America. They're kind of like the Women's Institute, but with a slightly more tolerant attitude towards homosexuality. And they picketed San Diego under the reasoning that they were annoyed because they didn't feel that comic book fans were putting as much effort into reading the Bible as they do into comic books. And I think it's a fair comment. But there are many reasons for this. For one thing, the main two comic publishers, Marvel and DC, each put out, about 200 issues a month between them. The makers of the Bible haven't released anything new in nearly 2,000 years. I suppose that's what happens when you kill off your most popular character 2 issues in. And of course, like most kind of comic book characters, we knew he'd be back. Although, what I will say is, at least Marvel and DC wait until the character's got a film coming out to resurrect them. 3 days. Pathetic. I suppose I can understand why the makers of the Bible wouldn't want to hang around waiting for Mel Gibson to be born. One man really enjoyed that. That's my work done. But no, I think if they do want to get people reading the Bible, because there are some flaws as far as Geek's concerned. I mean, there are very few explosions in the Bible, and only 3 of the characters wearing spandex. Noah's wife and 2 of the 3 wise men. I can't tell you which ones because I do not know their names. But if the Westboro Baptist Church really want to get geeks reading the Bible, what they need to do, write a new chapter in which the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost Rider team up to fight Galactus. Then I'll be interested.
Module 3. Collecting.
The Pokemon dance. It's not a thing. Collecting. Because there are 3 main ways I think in which geeks compete. There's how much pointless stuff you know, how much pointless stuff you own, and how many minutes of the 1978 Star Wars Holiday Special you've managed to sit through without the aid of alcohol. The record stands at 7 minutes, and that man's been in a self-induced coma for the last 5 years. In case you've not seen the Holiday Special in question, you really should check it out. It's a straight-to-video special, straight-to-TV special that aired in 1978 between the first 2 Star Wars films, and it introduced us to Chewbacca's family, his relatives Itchy and Lumpy. I don't know why he just didn't go the whole way and call them scrotum and be done with it. Because, but, as I say, I've always been a big collector. I mean, I do have 9 sonic screwdrivers and no actual screwdrivers, which means that I've not had a handle on my bedroom door for the last year. But I am prepared in the event of an invasion by the Sea Devils, so swings and roundabouts. But I always have been a collector. I mean, the big thing for me as a child was stickers. When I was young, the word panini used to mean that I'd spend lunchtime in detention, sort of peeling poorly cropped publicity photos of the Power Rangers off the front of my exercise book. Of course, nowadays the word panini means that I'm about to have a warm but ultimately disappointing sandwich. Times change. But I mean, George Lucas, the maker of Star Wars, he really, that was a nice pause for water in the wrong place. But no, George Lucas really kind of pioneered the whole collecting spirit. He really understood it. I mean, Star Wars has been slapped on everything from sort of lunch boxes to condoms. The one piece of Star Wars merchandising for which taking out the packaging not likely to be much of an issue. Well, of course, it wouldn't be mint, although it might be strawberry or vanilla. Who knows? But there's been lots of kind of quite hideous bits of Star Wars merchandise over the years, and a few of my favourites. I mean, one of my favourite ones. Just by way of cheer, who's seen Star Wars in the room? Is that pretty much? Is there anyone who hasn't? Right. Well, for your benefit, Star Wars. It opens up. The ship. There's 2 robots. The robots end up on a planet. They get captured and they get sold as junk. But then Luke Skywalker, he's like the hero of it. He's like Edward from Twilight. That was too far. I'm sorry. But he comes along. He wants to buy 2 of the droids to help out with farming. It's not about farming. There's more to it. But he wants to buy the droids, and so he picks one. He picks the big gold one, C-3PO, and that's fine. And then he picks the wrong droid for the little one. He picks the little red one. Fortunately, the little red one blows his top, so they choose the proper one, and plot happens. That's Star Wars in a nutshell. But because of course Star Wars, because it's the Star Wars universe, every character has to have their own backstory. And the Little Red Robot's backstory came in a 10-page comic strip called Skippy the Jedi Droid, in which it's revealed that Skippy, which probably isn't his name even in the comic, Skippy has Jedi powers, of course, and so can see the future and can see the fact that R2-D2, the little robot, he's needed for the plot. And so what he does, he blows his top intentionally, essentially committing suicide. Which, I'll be honest, has really ruined that film for me. Because, it's quite a knockabout scene, and now whenever I watch it, I'm just sat there thinking, I don't think they're handling this with the gravitas it deserves. This is wrong. Of course, my second sort of favourite bad bit of Star Wars merchandise is probably the 1984 made-for-TV movie Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure. Which, because what everybody really loved about Return of the Jedi was the spear-throwing teddy bears. And, true story, I did actually try rewatching the movie to research it for the show. But after 5 minutes of awkward Ewok slapstick, my computer actually shut itself down as if in protest. Which, considering some of the things I've watched on my computer over the years, is quite a statement. Clown porn, yes. Ewok hang gliding, you've gone too far this time. And my favourite bit of Star Wars merchandise, sort of bad Star Wars merchandise, is one I had as a kid, a book, the Star Wars Question and Answer Book of Space. Did anyone else in the room have that? No, I think they only printed 1 copy. And rightly so, because it's a factual book about space, but told from the fictional perspective of C-3PO and R2-D2. It must have been a real challenge for the writers. Especially when faced with questions such as, is there life on other planets? There might be, but not that we've met. What about Admiral Akbar? Maybe it was a trap. For those of you who didn't laugh or groan, that's a thing that he said in the film. It's not important. But the thing that I really liked about that book was the fact, because obviously over the years, there's been a lot of rumours and allegations about C-3PO's sexuality. There's been all the classic C-3PO jokes, such as, why did C-3PO cross the road? To hire a rent droid. Or knock knock.
Who's there?
No, sorry, you've done jokes before. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Don't know, but C-3PO's gay. All the classic jokes. But the book for me really kind of put all of those rumours to rest with its illustration on page 47, lovingly painted, of C-3PO from Star Wars attempting to make love to a black hole. They're more disgusted by it than you are. I don't know what that says about you.
Fan fiction.
Data, you are fully functional, aren't you?
Of course, but
How fully?
I am programmed in multiple techniques. A broad variety of pleasuring.
Best thing about that is that's not fan fiction. That actually happened. Obviously not in real life. It's Star Trek. I'm not implying Star Trek is real. Just so nobody gets carried away. Just out of interest, do we have any fan fiction writers in the room? We clearly have some. Statistically, I refuse to believe that no one in here has written fan fiction. Anyone willing to own up to it? You seem to be laughing very guiltily there. Is this a tacit admission on your part? Carry on. No, I think we'll continue. Have you written fan fiction? No. You just look very guilty for no reason. I think for those, because obviously, no fan fiction writers. No, I refuse to believe that, but I'll find out later. I think your friends will rat you out after the show. Because fan fiction, in case you've never read any, fan fiction is what happens when someone goes, I'd really like to write the best story ever, but at the same time, I recognise that The X-Files was the pinnacle of human creative achievement. And so I feel that the best I can do is just sort of replicate that, but maybe make Scully a bit gay. Fan fiction, before I kind of go on with this section, I want to say there's a lot of amazing, well-written, thought-provoking fan fiction out there. Not all of it is bad. I mean, the problem is that to get to the amazing stuff, you've got to wade through the likes of the cast of the OC and the Justice League team up to fight Chucky from Rugrats. A story which I do not regret writing to this day. There are sort of so many stories out there. I mean, and there's some famous ones, of course. I mean, I don't think I can talk about fan fiction without mentioning 50 Shades of Grey. Mentioned it, it's over. Moving on. And no, I mean, just for those of you who don't know, 50 Shades of Grey was basically the little Twilight fan fiction that really shouldn't have done. Someone wrote a piece of Twilight fan fiction, took it to a publisher. They said, "We can't publish this." So she went back and did a find and replace. Find Bella, replace with woman from 50 Shades of Grey. I've not read it. And she took it back to her publisher and they said, that wasn't the reason we can't publish this. But then eventually someone's mum really liked it and it made its way out into the world. That was a dark day for me, the time when my mum told me that she installed it on her Kindle. Last time we spoke, I'm not looking forward to the follow-on conversation, to be honest. But there are many kinds of fan fiction out there. I mean, it's not all just text-based. There are sort of fan audios, fan videos, or as Transformers director Michael Bay calls them, remakes. But I'm gonna say, obviously, the Transformers films, they're not fan fiction. I mean, because obviously the acting quality is much higher. in a fan video. Some Shia LaBeouf fans in the room, I can feel it. Did you not see Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? There are many different types of sort of genres of fan fiction. I mean, one of the more sort of infamous ones is the self-insertion fan fiction, which not what it sounds like. Often not as rude as it sounds. Well, it's sometimes not as rude as it sounds. Self-insertion fan fiction is what happens when the author goes, yeah, I want to write a story and I want to be in it, but a better version of me. And so they have all the characters from the existing TV series or film or what have you, referring to how great the character is, and really sort of they basically force all the characters to be their friends and like them. In North Korea, the main character is often referred to as the Mary Sue, which in North Korea is known as the Kim Jong-un. And it's pretty much the only thing you can find on the internet. Censorship. Of course, then there's slash fiction. Do we have any slash fiction fans in the room? Yes, yeah, we do, but they're guilty.
Not a fan, it's just hilarious.
It is. I'm hoping the next 5 minutes will prove that it's hilarious. Obviously they're all well meant, but slash fiction. I mean, it's essentially slash fiction is stories featuring a pairing of two. Usually, does it have to be two same-sex characters? I think.
Not always.
Not always. You seem like an expert. So.
I've read, again, it's very funny. So.
What was the best one you've read?
Oh, they're mainly Firefly ones that I've read, and they're quite good fun.
Okay. please elaborate.
Well, like
we could do a sexing up the show.
Well, generally writers that try and have River slash someone tends to go quite funny. But
yeah, well, River slash someone. I mean, she's quite violent. For those of you who don't know, the slash in fan fiction is actually meant to denote that the characters are together. So Harry slash Ron, or Godzilla slash Megazord, or Paul Chuckle slash Barry Chuckle. To me, to you, etc. Again, I don't regret writing it. Same joke twice. If there's any of you kind of concerned about the grammatical inaccuracy of using a slash to denote and rather than or, probably don't proceed any further with the slash fiction. Again, a lot well written, some of it quite badly grammatically written, much like that sentence was. And I can't really explain why there's so many typos and the like. I mean, logically, I guess the only possible explanation would be that for some reason the author was typing one-handed. I can't explain it. The first recorded piece of fan fiction was actually the 1st century AD story Judas Kiss, which told the true story. Told the true story of what happened in the Garden of Gethsemane between Jesus and Judas. Turns out not only was Judas a tragically misunderstood figure, also had rocking abs. And of course one of the most famous pairings in slash fiction is Kirk Spock from Star Trek. Kirk slash Spock, which I've never really understood. Because I can't help but feel that the Star Trek TV series really went out of its way to prove that Kirk liked the women. And I suppose the argument could be made that maybe Kirk's bisexual, but he was surrounded by a lot of quite attractive young men. Sulu, Chekhov, to a much lesser extent Scotty. And not at one point did you see him kind of drop a space pencil and go, Mr. Sulu, would you mind picking that up, please? You preempted it. Oh my. Because that's the thing that George Takei says. It's not important. As I say. That one's getting diminishing returns. But no, I've always, because the thing is that really they couldn't have tried any harder to make it seem as if Kirk liked the women. I mean, Short of maybe having him wear a T-shirt saying "Set a course for pussy." Yeah, maybe that would have worked. But it would never work between Kirk and Spock. I mean, as I alluded to earlier, Vulcans have the Ponfar. They have sex once every 7 years. On average, Captain Kirk has sex once every 7 minutes. It's just not going to work out. But ultimately, fan fiction. It is a loving tribute. People write it because they love the characters. They want to write their own stories with them in. And a lot of writers see them as such. I mean, J.K. Rowling, she's gone on record as saying she really kind of respects and admires sort of the fact that people write fan fiction. She's a big fan of it. Presumably because she's not read some of the stories that I have in the Harry Potter universe. And I've got a short extract from one here. It's a story called Love, Chess and Horcruxes by Walter the Wizard. Probably not his real name. So I'd like to share it with you. Professor Flitwick heard the cries as he approached Snape's office. Now, I've got to say, for a character who's seemingly hated by pretty much everyone in the Harry Potter universe, gets an awful lot of sex online. For a second, he froze in his steps, and he hurried forward, drawing his wand. Oh yeah. He halted in front of the oak door, took a deep breath and pushed it open. Professor Snape was lying naked on the floor amidst torn rags that had evidently been his robes. His fists clenched, his face screwed. On top of him was none other than Albus Dumbledore. Also naked and pumping away with all of his might. Both were making very meaningful sounds like ag and oh and and yeah. Professor Flitwick closed the door, sobbing. He wished more than anything that he'd asked Snape out sooner. Little twist in the tale there. Which brings us very neatly on to our next module.
Module 5. Furries.
Yeah, there's only so much Ewoks you can take of an evening. I promise that was the last one. Although there may be a mention of Snuff from Thundercats slightly later on. Don't want to ruin it for you. Because, I feel like I can't really do a show about geeks without addressing the furry situation. I mean, I get the impression we've got a few people aware of furries. Just by way of cheer, who's heard the term before? Yeah. Quite a few of you. Those of you who haven't, furries, they're basically people who have an attraction, sexual or otherwise, although usually sexual, towards anthropomorphised animals, such as Bert Raccoon from the animated series The Raccoons, or Melissa Raccoon from the animated series The Raccoons. That was one hell of a sexy show. But they're very much the geek equivalent of the Welsh. No, bad people. I know what you're thinking. That's not what I meant. They're the equivalent of the Welsh in that, in the geek world, they seem to be kind of the accepted form of prejudice. Every comedian's got their joke about furries. I mean, how many furries? Excuse me. That's not part of the joke. That's just my natural digestive system. How many furries does it take to change a light bulb? None. They're all too busy fucking each other dressed as cats in the dark. We've all got them. I kind of feel that furries are sort of the unsung heroes of the geek world, because when I'm lying in bed at night, surrounded by my Power Rangers Megazords and with my poster of Amy Pond looking down at me as if to say, I would never let you inside me. I mean, it's nice that they made the custom poster for me. I suppose it was either that or a restraining order. It's one way or the other. But when I'm lying in bed at night doing that, it's quite comforting to kind of be reminded of furries and the fact that I'm not one of them. But I feel really bad about that, because we're living in an increasing age of acceptance. I mean, we're not there yet, but we are trying to kind of recognise all kind of creeds and colours and sexualities as equal. But I can't help but feel that if I went into my doctor's surgery tomorrow and he was dressed as Badger from the Animals of Farthing Woods, my reaction probably wouldn't be, "How progressive of you." No, it would probably be, I think the broken arm will heal on its own. I'll see myself out. Which, when looked at that way, would be a really good way of cutting down NHS waiting times. So, because I think it's wrong that they look down on quite so much. I mean, I don't understand what makes furries any worse than Klingons. The people who dress up as Klingons at sci-fi conventions. I mean, furries, in my experience, have always been quite kind of friendly and nice, and crucially don't have their own made-up language. I think what really separates them is the fact that furries don't have a 6-foot bladed weapon on them at all times. That's maybe why we mock them so. I was at London Film Comic Con a few weeks ago. I didn't meet David Hasselhoff. Although I did get a happy ending. No, I didn't. I didn't. Of course I didn't. Because I know when I go to a convention that my dressing up options, my cosplay options, severely limited. I can be sort of Fat Spider-Man or Fat Green Lantern or Adam West from the 1960s Batman series. But I mean, I saw a guy dressed as a Klingon, and he was tiny. I mean, he didn't even have the build to cosplay as an accountant. And I felt bad, but I couldn't help but let out a small snigger. And he heard me, and he turned around and he said, "Hab socially cooch," which apparently means your mother has a smooth forehead in Klingon, and it's pretty much the gravest insult they can issue. In space, no one can hear you make your mum jokes, apparently. Still, it's nice to know that the concept of Botox has reached the Klingon homeworld. Because I think deep down, secretly, we're all a little bit furry. And not just the sci-fi conventions where, let's face it, hygiene does tend to be an issue. But I mean, really, who among us can say that they haven't, at some point in their lives, had a few drinks, sat down, watched The Lion King, and at some point in proceedings thought, "Probably would." Just me, isn't it? Yeah. But I think we should lay off the furries because, I mean, apart from anything, we have Twilight fans now. And for me, Twilight fans, whenever I see them at conventions, they always remind me of furries in a way. They do remind me of an animal, namely squirrels, in that they are cute, but still essentially vermin.
Module 6. Fan groups.
Look, it's perfectly understandable. I go zooming around space and time, saving planets, fighting monsters and me. But let's be honest, it's sort of marvellous. So naturally now and then people notice me. Start up their little groups.
We're done. Good. I've had a lot of experience with fan groups over the years. I think, right from the word go, I was the founding member of my primary school's Battlestar Galactica fan club. I was also the only member of my primary school's Battlestar Galactica fan club. When I went to uni, I joined the sci-fi sock there. I'll be honest, mainly as a way of picking up the ladies. Didn't work. Because, of course, every other 18-year-old virgin entering the university had much the same idea. And so, in the end, the ratio of women to men at the group was much like the ratio of locals to tourists in Trafalgar Square on a Saturday. In that the ones who were there were getting increasingly crowded and annoyed. And for any women who were looking for love, very much a buyer's market. By which I mean that they had their pick, of course. I don't mean that we were all secretly gigolos. Because I'm very aware that would have been the prostitution equivalent of a closing down sale in a 99p shop. The selection was not good. I've been in many kind of fan groups. I mean, there's some great fan groups in London. I mean, there's one called Lotner. Do we have any Lotners in?
Hey.
Yeah, split across the room. So yeah, I mean, speak to them if you want to be a part of their gang. They're a great group. And there are many other great groups kind of around London and around the country, in fact. But the thing is that, these groups, the fan groups, are all kind of predicated on lots of fans coming together, and they're all passionate about the same sorts of things, but in very different ways. For instance, asking a seemingly innocuous question, such as, "Who's your favourite Doctor Who?" can really split a room. Not least because you've called him Doctor Who, and that's not his name. It's the Doctor. But I always find that question's actually quite revealing, some people's answers to that. I mean, if you ask someone who their favourite Doctor Who is and they say it's Tom Baker, probably means they were born in the 70s, or can't think of their actual answer to the question. If they say it was David Tennant, probably means they've not seen any of the good ones. And if they say it's Sylvester McCoy, their favourite Doctor Who, probably means they're Sylvester McCoy. Oh, I didn't know you were in, Sylvester. You were weird in The Hobbit. I've met a lot of very agreeable people at sci-fi societies, and I've also met people who have sent angry letters to my parents because of, let's say, a disagreement over my playing style in World of Warcraft. My preferred playing style, of course, being naked and with the webcam on. I don't know what the problem is. But if any of you are thinking, kind of, hang on, World of Warcraft doesn't have an inbuilt video window, all I'll say to that is, if your laptop does not have at least 3 monitors attached to it, I don't even want to be in your guild. You're not my kind of geeks. When it comes to sci-fi groups, there are essentially 6 different kinds of people who you'll find there. The first type is the Godfather Geek. He's the person who's he's seen everything, he's done everyone. No. Exactly the opposite. He's seen everything, he's done everything, he's met everyone, and hasn't shut the fuck up about it in the last 20 years. Have you met William Hartnell? No, he died 20 years before I was born. He's that kind of person. And the second kind is the one-track mind geek. It's said that, there's the old sort of myth that men think about sex once every 6 seconds. You can pretty much guarantee that the one-track mind geek is thinking of Thundercats for the other 5. Or, whatever his... And in the 6th second, clearly thinking of Chitara. He's going to think of Chitara right now. Godspeed, sir. Possibly Snarf if he's unwell. There's the Snarf reference. Yeah. Foreshadowing. Or maybe spoilers. No, sorry, who was that? Who did the Snarf impression? Get out. Of course, the third kind of person you'll find at a sci-fi group is the expert. And we can be recognised by our catchphrase. By our catchphrase, I think you'll find. And of course, insider information, if you want to beat an expert geek in conversation, because most conversations for the expert geek really are a competition. If you want to beat us, just have Wikipedia on standby, because it's very much like kryptonite to the expert geek, in that it's both the source of our knowledge and the thing that will ultimately destroy us. Of course, the fourth kind of person at a sci-fi group is the regular fan. They're the kind of person who knows what a sonic screwdriver is, knows where to stick it, doesn't necessarily know how many stories it's appeared in. I like to call this group the part-timers. It is, of course, 139 stories for the sonic screwdriver, or 140 if you want to count the 2007 Children in Need Many Adventure Time Crash, but let's not get silly, guys. The fifth kind of person you'll find is the casual viewer. They're the kind of person who, if asked, they'd probably consider themselves a fan. I mean, they've still got a couple of episodes from the last series of Doctor Who left to watch on their Sky Plus, along with a couple of episodes of EastEnders, and a week's worth of bargain hunts. And they're actually some of the nicest, chattiest, friendliest people you find at the sci-fi groups. Unfortunately, they're also the ones who won't be coming back the following week. And the final kind of people you'll find at a sci-fi group is the mistakes. Which, contrary to what some of you... What was that? I think it was just that. Was that outside? No, it's fine. I heard someone talking. I'm getting voices in my head. This is the point in the show where that usually happens. But no, the mistakes is not what many geeks' parents call them. At least I'm assuming not many people's parents were as cruel as mine were. The mistakes are the people who have come into the pub of an evening not expecting a mass of geeks. And they're the ones who can be recognised by the fact they're sat there on their phones, turning your evening's conversation into a trending topic on Twitter. Hashtag War of the Nerds. Never live it down. But you know, coming to the end, which is good because we're nearly the end of the time. And so I think the thing is that speaking to a lot of geeks, I think we do have sort of difficulty expressing our emotions and sort of. And I know, I've taken a lot of playful pop shots at different kinds of geeks tonight. And if there is anyone who's been at all offended by anything I said, please don't be, because the truth is that I'm deeply, deeply envious of anyone who sort of comes out and sort of, is proud about their geekiness, in whatever way that takes, dressing up or writing fan fiction. Because I've always been a bit of, up until a couple of years ago when I started talking about it on stage, I've always been a bit of a kind of shamed geek, sort of closeted geek. And, when I was growing up, when a lot of the other kids were starting to sort of hide sort of cigarettes and alcohol under their beds, I was hiding Pokemon cards. And later on when they were starting to hide porn under their bed, I was still hiding Pokemon cards. I was quite a late developer, and I knew where my dad kept his, if it came down to it. Third drawer down on his bedside table, a couple of well-thumbed copies of Razzle, and a Sunday Sport magazine with a hilarious parody of the Spice Girls, which was arousing. That's weird, isn't it? That's weird that I share... Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to see a psychiatrist at the end of the run, so thanks for paying for the session. But that difficulty with emotions, it does extend to relationships. I mean, a couple of years ago I was actually in a relationship, which is the twist ending to the show. But no, perhaps the more surprising thing is that eventually I had to break up with the girl. And I just couldn't find a way to do it, I was having real difficulty. So I did what any good geek does, and I turned to the words of my heroes. The exact words of my heroes, in fact, what I'm trying to say is I wrote a breakup letter composed entirely of quotes from sci-fi shows. And I'd like to share it with you tonight, but I do need some help from a member of the audience. Captain Arrogant, would you come up to the stage? Give him a round of applause. What's your name there, sir? Alex. Walshy, right. Is that like Scotty from Star Trek, is it? Yeah? Any good with engines? This isn't going anywhere, is it? So what I need you to do is I need you to hold this flip chart, because I'm going to read out the letter and you're going to show the audience where the quotes have come from. Do you think that's something you're capable of? Have you ever used a flip chart before? No. You'll get the hang of it. If you can stand sort of in the corner here, just sort of face out that way so that as many people can see this as possible. I mean, to be honest, I didn't actually anticipate that I'd be filling both sides of the room when I wrote this bit, so yeah. Without further ado, here's my breakup letter. There we go. Daisy. Sorry, I'll indicate when you... Just slide to this first, don't they? Can everybody see it? Yeah! Excellent. I'll give you the nod to turn to the next page. I don't want independent thought going on here. I think you ought to know I'm feeling very depressed. I have been and always shall be your friend. But I have a bad feeling about this. I thought we'd always be together. But it's not easy writing a breakup letter entirely of quotes. Sometimes you have to bend the rules. All alone in the night. On sale now. But we are not alone. No, there is another. So what I want to know is, you've got me, who's got you? Come on! Don't know why I wrote that actually, his name was Terry. Silence will fall when the question is asked. There can be only one. Oh, curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. Fucking browncoats. I am not a merry man. So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? Hasta la vista, baby. It's Terminator. And of course it turned out she actually was cheating, and so 7 months later she broke up with me. Oh, thanks. Give a massive cheer for Wall Street.